Welcome back to the Roundup, everybody. Today, it is quite a stacked episode. We've got the delay of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, the controversy around the indie game Dark and Darker, layoffs at Private Division, Take-Two's indie label that definitely is kind of struggling with the hits, to be honest. Then, Outer Worlds, Space of Choice Edition, also a Private Division thing, and ouch, because remaster downgrades are not particularly nice. And then Accusations against Bleak Faith Forsaken for apparently reusing animations from Elden Ring. Quite a lot to cover, of course, with the help of today's sponsor, Brilliant.org/Bellular News, who today are going to help me survive a spot of Russian roulette, and now have a free 30-day trial. So here's the deal. Brilliant is the best way to learn new STEM fields, which will help you improve your prospects and better yourself, all with their fantastic site and app, and the first 200 to click my link get 20% off. So, a while ago, we did some probability, and today, we're going to learn about Russian roulette, which isn't exactly the type of applying math to real life that I had in mind, but after that Ybarra video we did, I should probably be ready for anything. But jokes aside, their modules on Russian roulette are actually a fantastically fun and a little bit dark way to learn, right? An absurd situation that's underpinned by maths that often people find to be very counterintuitive. And understanding the counterintuitive is what lets us see things clearly when other people are led astray. Understanding probability via Brilliant just gives you a bit of a superpower for life, really. I mean, our own cognitive biases can lead us astray. It can mean we don't see the world objectively. So razor-sharp, probabilistic thinking is one of the most important things that'll save you time, save you money, earn you money, and just put you on an upward trajectory. So don't just sponge in facts, learn by doing with brilliant.org/Bellular News, where the first 200 to click my link get 20% off their annual subscription, and you can get a 30-day free trial today. Per Bloomberg sources, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has been delayed after already being delayed to spring 2023 from an original 2022 release. And, well, if some scuttlebutt is to go by, even that itself was significantly delayed versus what was originally planned. So, Matt, what's going on?
It is going to be delayed. And the thing is, everyone kind of saw that and went, nice. Fantastic, they're going to fix it. That's what delays are for, right? You're going to see all the feedback that came from that trailer, from that, you know, it being the laughing stock of the internet for a couple of days. They're going to solve it. They realize that's what's happened. Great, job done. We've had a great day as us video game community people. We've fixed everything, except that's likely not going to happen whatsoever, because a delay like that's not going to give them time to fix everything, is it? A delay like that's not going to be time to redesign the whole game and rebalance the whole game. It's likely that it was way worse than it looked, and it needed polish.
Yeah.
Which is, oh boy.
This is where we get into just causality, right? Because these two statements are true. Number one, there's going to be a delay. Thing that's true, number two, this news has happened after they received poor feedback. Now, those two things are not necessarily connected, but it could be that with the showcase that added just a little bit more in the pile of, no way, we should truly polish this. Because overall, the industry commentary has been that, yes, this is almost certainly a delay for polish, not really for changing core designs and that kind of thing. Because ultimately, a complete, like, unlive servicification of this game, that would be a reboot.
Years.
Yeah.
Years and years and years.
And this is a game project that already has eaten up it's eaten up Rocksteady Games since their last project, which was ages ago.
Yeah, one of the other things, of course, then, is that release date, May, was brutal. You're not going to, like, everyone's going to be playing Zelda. Everyone's going to be gearing up for, you know, maybe there's not an awful lot of overlap between Final Fantasy 16 and Suicide Squad, but, you know, you still have that brutal period of time. Because you've got, like, Diablo as well. And it's like, that's a rough time to release. So there's probably a decent part of it was, can we release in a less crowded thing where we're not going to be murdered quite as badly as we probably will be? And the answer was just like, yeah. What's an extra couple months if it turns a game that's so bad versus games that are very good to a game that's not that bad and there's no real competition?
And I suppose as well, think about their last release and bugs.
Exactly.
It really damaged them in day one.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately then, it's hard to say exactly what's going on here. Quite a lot can be achieved in not that much time. So it could end up coming out feeling less of the live servicey soup that people perhaps were worried about. But if that does happen, it'll be small changes that feel big, but like the actual core game will still be the core game. It probably is more just for ensuring that it's not a shit show on launch, like their previous title. And even per what Jeff Grubb said, and this is where it could be more interesting, it may shift into 2024. Now, what's funny is, and unfortunately I don't have it here, but it was, I think it was some tweets or commentary from somebody who worked at Insomniac Games talking about, like, you know, internally we were kind of wondering, like, you know, this new game from Rocksteady, will we beat them with Spider-Man 1? And now it's basically transpiring that Spider-Man 2 may come out before this game, which I think just goes to show how not smooth sailing the development of this project has been.
Yeah, I think Warner Brothers need to get their ass together if they're going to continue this way. But even that, like, I suppose that's another thing of why shift to 2024? Well, you shift from May. Well, you're not going to hit June, right? You're not going to hit July or August. You're probably going to go September, because that's like the next room. But then that's when Spider-Man 2 is coming out. That's when other games start to pick up again. So it's the thing of, you can't do delay until there's no competition anymore. That used to be a pretty strong tactic in the industry, was time your releases so you're the only game on the market worth caring about. You can't do that now, because there's always something. There's always something. And even then, like, they'll delay to 2024 if they do. What else are they going to be running into? What else is going to come out of nowhere? Like E3 this year, Gamescom this year, but like spring 2024, get your hands on this exciting title. And the suits at WB and Rocksteady just going, no, why has this happened? Why us every time?
Yeah, rough stuff.
Yep.
For our next story, though, also rough stuff, because you don't normally hear stories of, the AAA getting the police on the indie. Now, the question is going to be, obviously, is there good reason? So to dive into this then, there's a game that you've probably actually heard because it was one of the top demos. Actually, I think at one point it was the biggest demo on Steam for the most recent Next Fest. Dark and Darker, right? A co-op dungeon crawler. Definition of indie darling. I mean, went down really well, but there's a slight problem because there's a AAA publisher that's actually arguing that this game was built on stolen resources and code from them, and they've went so far as to encourage a police search of the developers' offices. And that AAA is Nexon. Iron Mace includes former Nexon employees who were disciplined and fired by the company, and goes on to claim that the former employees are creating Dark and Darker with code created at Nexon. They also allege that an unnamed former employee leaked Nexon assets while employed at the company and urged fellow employees to quit and create a game similar to P3, which is a title that was in development at Nexon. Now, Iron Mace are saying, no, we did this code from scratch. It's ours. Most of our assets are from the Unreal marketplace. The other things and design docs were made in-house. This has already been audited by an outside agency, and you cannot copyright a genre.
All true, seemingly.
This can basically be summed up with, a little bit on the About Us section from our side, right? We're a merry band of veteran game developers disillusioned by the exploitative, greedy practices we once helped create. We are experts who have worked on many of the biggest hits in Korea. We've seen firsthand how corporate game companies sell their soul for an easy payday. We are disappointed to see them doubling down on more and more exploitative practices and becoming more like casinos instead of bringing joy to gamers. Now, that's absolutely something I think we can all get behind as a sentiment. 100%. The thing, though, is Nexon are basically saying, no, look at this frame by frame. With the project we did, it's the bloody same. You can even look at this, and it very much seems like they were working in this project with Nexon. They decided, screw this, we do not like Nexon, and there's good reasons not to like Nexon. Sure. And they go and do their own version of it. And it's just that thing of like, well, you can't copyright a genre. So if they have made essentially a highly similar game, but all the assets are theirs, all the code is theirs, there's no code reuse, then that is a funny little situation, isn't it? It
certainly depends on, I think, some interpretation of the law and some interpretation of whatever the contract said, because that's obviously a pretty big thing in industry, is that you can't like work on something in your spare time in someone's, like when you're working for a studio, and then just go and do that yourself. You're generally not really allowed to do that. Sometimes it's not in your spare time, but like especially if you've been using their equipment, their time, you've been like even prototyping stuff that might be for a game that's there, that is under contract a lot of the time, literally legally theirs. So I guess it's like we recreated it, but you made the code from scratch, but was that knowledge that you gleaned while there? Did you maybe have, say, some algorithm that you designed for whatever way you want to put it in terms of, I guess, more software engineering kind of context? Okay, you thought of that algorithm and you have it in this code. You recreated it using your own slightly different code. That's where it's like down to interpretation, I think. But I mean, yeah.
Well, from what it's worth, they say there's nothing to worry about. That the police did actually, go to their office, but they were the police. I suppose looked around and left. That said, I doubt that the police officer is then going to say, "Could you open up Unreal Engine there and show me some of those scripts, boss?" I don't think the police are going to say that. So we'll see. We'll see if something happens. I suppose if they really feel that they have a strong case, they could bring legal proceedings.
They could. I mean, that's the thing. I guess it depends on what Nexon want out of this. If they just want to shut the game down, then they'll have to go to legal proceedings. Do they want to put a bit of fear into them? Do they want some money out of it? Then it's like, well, if they won't back down, then it probably will happen. Unless Nexon were just going, we have been wronged, we must correct this wrong. And then it goes, actually, never mind, the auto's out fine. But for some reason, I can't imagine Nexon releasing a statement saying, hello, we were wrong. Sorry about that. Work away, make your game. I imagine they'll take this as far as possible.
Yeah. Next up, we've got an update in the Strauss-Zelnick universe. That's, of course, Take-Two Interactive, the publisher behind the likes of Red Dead and many other things. Basically, right, I think it was the earnings call, Strauss-Zelnick, because their CEO said that they're not going to be doing any broad layoffs. Like, they want to get their costs down, they need to, but they're not going to do broad layoffs. In the same way that, of course, in the tech industry, we have just seen, 10% of workforce deleted. Now, that said, he did say we're going department by department and trying to drive efficiency. And one of those departments has been, of course, Private Division. Now, Private Division is less than 1% of their expected yearly net bookings. They're a small part of the group. They've definitely had setbacks as well. So this is not particularly surprising to me. Now, the Take-Two spokesperson basically said that, yes, there are targeted reductions in their US teams, primarily in corporate ops and label publishing, and that the impact on their development teams has been minimal. Now, that said, Private Division are not exactly pumping out a massive number of games.
No, not at all.
You could very much see that they have this publishing wing that's bigger than it needs to be for what it does. And in a case like that, well, it's your fault for doing it wrong, but ultimately, yeah, you may need to trim the org down. And that's just kind of how it goes. Now, they were quick to argue that basically the US development teams really, they shouldn't be affected by this, so it is just corporate operations and label publishing. Now, the recent context there is interesting because Kerbal Space Program 2 is honestly a crazy situation where it's not actually being made by the founders. It's people who were on the Kerbal 1 team basically ended up in a studio formed by Private Division to make Kerbal 2. Now that it launched to a 50% on Steam, mostly because I think consumer expectations of what the early access would represent were not met. Also, our next story is going to be a bit of an L from them. Now, that being said, is more people in the corporate office necessarily going to help with these issues?
That's the awkward part, where it's like, likely not. This likely isn't going to have too much of an impact, but at the same time, you kind of go, well, if there's maybe worse communications over upcoming games and issues or something like that, it's like you can downplay the importance of the non-core development staff who are supporting things, but I feel like that'll be a layoff that you don't really feel it missing until you feel it missing, because you've bungled the publishing or the marketing of a game or something along those lines. And they go, yeah, we shouldn't have got all of those people. Oh, whoops, whatever. But I think at the same time, I guess that's the awkward part. When it comes to that, you would imagine they have a better idea of what they're doing wrong. Kind of going, okay, well, what was the measurable output? It's a little bit different than actually making a game where it's a black box and you put in developers and out comes a video game. At least that's how the industry treats it most of the time. Yeah. It's just, we just throw them into the blender and then some magic happens and then we've got a game, I guess. Whatever, because obviously studios have made really bad decisions on firing and stuff over time for that, so you can tell there's maybe a little bit of lack of understanding. But I think when it comes to, how many blog posts, how many deals have you struck, how many things have you got, like the more measurable to a corporate entity parts, they're probably a little bit more on the money of, yeah, sorry, this isn't really working.
Yeah.
Which is, it's unfortunate.
That's what I can see. And also, speaking of what is not working, we should go to the next story, which still is a Private Division story, and that is The Outer Worlds.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, so this one's kind of rough. Of course, Outer Worlds, made by Obsidian, published with Private Division. Of course, after that, Microsoft did acquire Obsidian. Now, the one thing that is a bit confusing is that the Outer Worlds Spacer's Choice Edition re-release is already a bit bizarre with its upgrade model, because if you own the game and don't own DLC, then, nothing. And basically the same for every permutation other than if you own the game digitally and own the DLC, then you get a discount.
Oh, jeez.
So that's what's going on for this new edition. But then the thing is, well, what happens if that new edition is actually suffering on all platforms? And this is really a story that I wanted to bring up because it just highlights something about the artistry in game development. So number one, just like it does struggle to maintain a solid 60 in performance mode, it has performance issues. But also look at the lighting, right? So here's the thing. Is what you see on the right a upgraded lighting engine that's like technically more accurate and all of that? Yeah, sure it is. Is that, when the actual cutscenes were being made, when those cinematics or whatever were being made, is that the lighting that the artists were working with? No. And this is a problem we consistently see in these, you could almost call them systemic remasters rather than a remake, because, the remake is going to be, in the most extreme, Final Fantasy VII, which is just, it's a different thing now.
Yeah, it'll be handcrafted again. And an attempt to go, okay, well, we're starting fresh. We'll make this again in some capacity.
Yeah,
same way,
gold standards Capcom.
Yeah, and then Demon Souls as well, which was obviously that was the same actual video game layer, but everything else was built up around it. So it's okay, well, it's not the same, but it's the same in a way. It's remade, but also the same. Whereas this is just, we've just slapped stuff on top that's an upgrade, but we haven't done the due diligence to go through everything is the same.
Yeah, I think this also happened with the Assassin's Creed 3 remaster and the Assassin's Creed, was it Ezio trilogy sort of remaster rebundle thing.
And Final Fantasy X, as people have been pointing out.
Yep, that's the screen. Yes, and FF10. Mm-hmm. And man, it was especially bad in FF10.
Yeah, which is annoying.
Those were pretty painful to see.
It's annoying because that game is otherwise a fantastic remaster.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where ultimately here, it's probably not the developer's fault. It's just going to be they didn't have the time to do as much as they, as much as they maybe would have wanted to. So unfortunately, is another bit of an L for Private Division, who I think increasingly are a less and less important part of the company. Unless they do have some pretty major hits. I think they have a small number of upcoming projects. They are pretty big, but again, it's definitely going to be feeling rough at that office now that they've had targeted layoffs and also issues with their two most recent releases.
Yeah, I mean, for a hint of how serious the Outer Worlds Spacer's Choice is going down, it's currently 23% positive on Steam.
Ouch.
That's mostly negative from 312. That's a death sentence, in effect.
Our final story. What happens when you're so Souls-like that...
You're a Souls is?
Yeah, you're maybe a Souls is. Wow, that's a good way of putting it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so look. Trends happen in gaming, right? I mean, Rocksteady innovate with their combat system, the Arkham games. Then you see Shadow of Mordor, you see Spider-Man, you see those things come in, right? The industry has trends. There's the Souls-like trend, which has led to many other games. You've got your Lords of the Fallen, the Surge, and generally when you're making a game, you want to think about what will really matter to a customer. Do you need to go and reinvent the wheel on absolutely everything? No, you don't. A wooden crate's a wooden crate. It's okay. But, as captured by PC Gamer, Archangel Studios have actually found themselves in a little bit of hot water from people, because seemingly there are copied animations for Bleak Faith Forsaken, which is their new Souls-like game. And it definitely didn't help that these are, very believed to be ripped, right? Actually ripped from Dark Souls and other FromSoft games, with a Dark Souls modder, Meowmaritus, I think, believing that their mod tools were actually used to do this. So imagine how much that would suck. You love these games, you're making mod tools, and then a developer uses your tools to yank some animations. Yeah. And they have obviously said, I do not condone people using my DS Anim Studio software in aid of exporting animations to include in commercial products or sell them in the Epic Game Store. I mean, even that, somebody could use that tool, slurp stuff out of the game, repackage it, put it on the Unreal store, put it on the Unity store.
Yeah, and that appears to be, according to the developer, that's actually what happened. It wasn't their problem. They just went and bought animations on the Epic Marketplace.
Yeah.
And they're there, which means maybe they were the ones doing this, but the result is effectively the same.
So they were using Epic Skeleton, which, again, is just one of those things. Like, do you want to do, like, the full rigging process for your humanoid? Or do you just want to use Epic Skeleton and then get on with the game design bit that'll really matter to your players? Generally, like, if you can use assets, because a lot of times assets, you maybe think that's like, oh, a bunch of crates. No, an asset could be like some IK stuff for animation. It could be a weather system. It could be anything like that. Those are all assets too. And it's like, yeah, do you want to sit down and make like your dynamic weather system? Or could you maybe plug something in and it'll just work? And then you can get back to designing the experience that a player will actually see, instead of doing software engineering that the player will never see. So this stuff is good stuff, but here this absolutely is going to suck for these developers because they used an asset pack from the store, stuff's all fine, and it then turns out that, well, the asset pack that they bought had stolen assets.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of... Were you looking at them going, oh, these are a bit similar to the game that we're obviously very inspired by? I imagine that's this is fine and normal, it's okay. Someone's recreated the animation and it's similar enough. But in this case, it's obviously just a little bit too Souls for people's tastes. But obviously, of course, it gets a bit more complicated. Again, because it's never one thing, is it?
Yeah, see, this one, honestly, I think this one is quite small.
Yeah.
Basically, there's some AI art generation used for their perk icons and their menus. And... yeah, there's definitely quite a lot of, there's some anger over that. For some people, this is like, oh, wow, look at this, you're replacing artists. For other people, it's going to be, okay, did you basically just hit the mood board button, grab some things and throw them in so you could see what it looks like? And it's one of those tricky situations where I think using stuff like temporary or something like, there's all sorts of things that happen in the industry. The difference, though, is when you're actually pushing that live. Not the difference, but a difference. Everyone's going to have, it'll all fall on a spectrum for people. Many are fine with, say, ChatGPT doing some stuff, but are like less fine with aspects of like Midjourney or whatever. Of course, I don't even want to get into the whole corridor digital thing, because they certainly set the internet on quite a lot of fire.
Boy, I have thoughts about that. Oh boy.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, right? This technology's happened, and what we ultimately want is for technology to be harnessed to allow creatives to do better work, to be more efficient. Another good tool in the toolbox. The problem, though, is we see people just thinking, oh yeah, so I can just sit on Midjourney for a while and then hook that up to a print-on-demand supplier, then hook that up to Etsy, and now Etsy's just flooded with AI-generated trash. Right, all of this bullshit that's going on. The people who are, using the stuff pretty unethically, and then the companies themselves who are, being, or what you say, disregarding a lot of people's concerns. You could, I guess, say disregarding the ethical debate over, over training data sets, over all of this stuff. Tim Sweeney's actually came out against... the slurping up of people's artwork, which I guess is a relevant thing because ArtStation, which is owned by Epic, has got into quite a lot of drama recently, within this topic. So ultimately, I would say, I think there needs to be some sort of situation where there can be an AI model that is a tool that a developer can acquire and then can supply their own stuff. So then based on their own stuff and then the basic understanding or basics model that already exists, that they then have a production tool right there where your artists can generate variations, can essentially have a far more intelligent version of content aware fill that exists in Photoshop. But then the thing is, what's that model made of? What's the training set of that model? And I think that needs to be something where perhaps artists are able, if they want to license their art to that, or basically, there needs to be a way where there is proper compensation throughout the value chain. And it is one of those things where people will say, okay, but the AI is just, doesn't really know that this is a piece of art. It's just analyzing, patterns and stuff like that. And how neural nets work. It's just doing that. The only difference is, like, you do that when you look at someone else's art. The box in the corner just does it faster. And actually, in the same way that it's the dose that makes the poison, actually, the level of near instantaneous compute makes the poison here.
I mean, what's the point of art if there's not a hefty dose of suffering involved? I think that's
There we go.
I think that's where people have largely come from in this. It's like that human element. Don't try to get rid of that, please.
Yeah. You can ultimately, though, see from the dev side, like, maybe they honestly just thought, fuck, we have to get this done quickly enough. Use the demon box. And, you know, okay, we're trying to make this game in a budget. We'll use these animations from this animation set in the store. But then what's actually happened is, okay, so you've jumped into one debate about, I guess, ethics and technology, and you've also just looked like you stole an animation from a game in the genre that you're in using a mod tool.
Yeah.
And it turns out one of those things is true, but the obviously thing with the animation, they didn't know.
Yeah. That's why.
So rough.
That's why I think this is frustrating. Because I am like reading through some reviews here on Steam, and it's sitting at like mixed, and it's at a solid mix of like 64% positive. A lot of the concerns are it's not quite ready yet, it's not quite finished because it's not an early access game, but it's, you know, it's fully published at a price and it's like not quite there, bit rough in a couple places, and also some people highlighting at the animation issue. And you're like, it seems like those were shortcuts taken in order to actually like enable the game's core identity to stand out a little bit. Obviously, some people are saying it's too inspired by the Souls games, but I think that's okay if you're an indie and you're just like, yeah, what spin can we have on this? Because it does some things unique. And you go, that's honestly just a shame. It's a shame if ultimately they accidentally waded into these two different battlefields at the same time. It's like, man, if they had different animations and these were placeholder like icons, then I think people would be a lot more willing to go, oh yeah, you've got something pretty cool here. Maybe you shouldn't be selling it for $22.49 in pounds if it's not done yet, but you know, or it's so rough. But you know what? Good attempt, good try. That would have been the nice way for this to go.
Yeah,
but we can't have nice things, can we?
Well, yeah, it is what it is. I think at the very least today, these were a bunch of really interesting stories. So I guess let us know what you thought. Check out this video next. Of course, thanks to our sponsor for supporting today's video. And with that said, we'll see you next time.